Today, we're breaking down a really fascinating speech that connects an ancient Hindu scripture to, of all things, the Indian Constitution, the atomic bomb, and a pretty bold vision for India's future. It's a wild ride from ancient wisdom to modern-day power.
So let's start here. In the original copy of India's constitution, there's this incredible illustration from the Bhagavad Gita. But according to the speaker, Dr. Trivedi, this is way more than just decoration. He calls it a speaking picture, like it's a living, breathing instruction baked right into the nation's founding document.
And where it's placed is everything. It's not just on any page. It's right there with the directive principles, which are basically the guiding ideals for how the state should run. So the suggestion here is pretty profound. Its message is meant to be the philosophical compass for all of India's governance, the moral true north for its leaders.
But this idea of using the Gita for political inspiration, it's not new at all. Actually, it's been a major influence in Indian politics for more than 100 years.
Just look at this timeline. It really traces this powerful thread through modern Indian history. You've got Lokmanya Tilak finding the inspiration for complete self-rule in its pages. You have Mahatma Gandhi saying it was his go-to guide whenever he was in doubt. And that thread continues right up to modern diplomacy, with Prime Minister Modi presenting it to President Obama.
Okay, so this is where the connection between the Gita and modern power gets even more dramatic. How on earth does an ancient scripture about peace and duty connect to the creation of the atomic bomb? It sounds totally contradictory, but the link is actually incredibly direct. Get this, the head scientist of the Manhattan Project, J. Robert Oppenheimer, was so captivated by the Gita's philosophy that he actually learned Sanskrit just so he could read it in its original form. Now, this wasn't just some casual hobby, it was a deep dive that really shaped his entire worldview.
So when he witnessed that terrifying, world-changing power he had just unleashed, what did Oppenheimer do? He reached for a verse from the Gita to try and make sense of it. I mean, just think about that for a second. The very source of America's modern power was understood by its own creator through the lens of this ancient Indian text.
And this whole idea of wielding immense power brings us to an even deeper philosophical conflict that the speaker highlights, one that he argues is at the absolute core of our current ecological crisis. It all boils down to a simple question: how do we see our relationship with the natural world?
So the speaker lays out this really sharp contrast. On one side, you have this idea rooted in Indian thought of nature as a mother. You take nourishment from a mother, right? You don't exploit her. But on the other side, there's a worldview that sees nature as just a resource, something there for mankind's service, something to be subdued, mastered, and ultimately conquered.
And what's the result of this conqueror mindset? Well, according to the source, it's precisely why a century of unbelievable technological progress has also become our most dangerous. It has led us straight to ecological chaos, global warming, and a point where our own existence is on the line.
So, if this drive to conquer everything is the root of the problem, what's the alternative? The Gita offers a radically different way to operate in the world, and it all comes down to one core concept: Nishkam Karma.
Nishkam karma is basically the principle of selfless action. You do your duty, you perform your role, but you do it without being attached to the results. It's a path to inner peace because your happiness no longer depends on outcomes you can't really control. But that brings up a huge question, right? If you're not supposed to care about the outcome, why even bother to act in the first place?
Well, the philosophy here is that we don't actually control the results anyway. Think about it. From the cells working in our bodies to the galaxies spinning in space, we're all part of this immense cosmic system that operates on its own laws. Our only real role is to perform our duty, our specific action within that system. The final outcome? That's just fundamentally not up to us.
To make this less abstract, the speaker uses this fantastic analogy. Imagine your mind is like milk. It's unstable, and it easily gets diluted by the water of the world around you. But through discipline, you can stabilize it, turn it into curd. Then, through meditation, you churn it. And what do you get? Butter, an essence that can now exist in the water without dissolving into it. That's the goal, a butter mind that can act in the world without being consumed by it.
So how does all of this ancient philosophy translate into a modern vision for a country? Well, the Indian government has designated the next 25 years as the Amrit Kal, which basically means a golden or auspicious era. And the argument here is that this ancient text isn't some historical relic. Instead, it's the essential fuel, the nectar, that's needed to power the nation's future goals. The wisdom of the Gita is being positioned as the very source of strength for this next big chapter.
You can see how these ancient ideas are seen as plugging directly into these 5 national goals. It's super clear in pledges like removing a colonial mindset, which is all about freeing yourself from external influence, and instilling a strong sense of duty in citizens, which of course is the very heart of Nishkam Karma.
So all of this points to a really different vision of what it means for India to rise on the world stage. The goal isn't to dominate militarily or economically. It's to become a Jagat Guru, which means a teacher for the world. It's about inspiring and uplifting others, not conquering them, and offering a totally different model of what it means to be a global power. And this all brings us to a final call to action, turning the Gita's ancient words into a challenge for all of us today. The text says to shed the weakness of your heart and arise, and that really leaves us with a question to chew on. What are the internal weaknesses, both in ourselves and in our societies, that we have to overcome to truly rise?